Hello and welcome back to our next video in the nervous system chapter. This is covering some aspects of the peripheral nervous system. It's a little bit of an extension of the spinal cord video that I just got done doing. So we stopped at, so the ventral and dorsal roots came out to create the spinal nerve. Now we're going to see what happens when that spinal nerve branches into other things. And then we're also going to take a look at cranial nerves, some special nerves that are found associated with your brain. But first, before we jump into those specifics on nerves, we want to take a look at the structure of a nerve. So these would be like if you have ever had a sciatic nerve problem, which is the big nerve that runs down the back of your leg, or if you've ever bumped your funny bone, you have your ulnar nerve that travels right here in between your olecranon and your humerus. This guy right here, you whack that and you feel a little tinglies up down your arm. So those are peripheral nerves. They are bundles of axons that carry information to and from your central nervous system and your peripheral tissues, your muscles, your glands, your skin, things like that. So the whole nerve itself, right? So this whole nerve is wrapped in a connective tissue sheath called the epineurium, okay? So then within that nerve, there are smaller bundles of axons, and each of these bundles is wrapped by a connective tissue sheath called the perineurium. Okay? And then these bundles, also called fascicles, are filled up with individual axons, which themselves are wrapped by a little connective tissue sheath called the endoneurium. Now, hopefully you're kind of seeing a pattern here, because if you go back to what you learned in chapter 6 with muscle anatomy, we saw the exact same organization. With muscles, we had an epimysium, fascicles surrounded by a perineurium, including all of the muscle fibers, and each muscle fiber was wrapped by an endomysium. So it's the same exact pattern, which makes it so nice to have this repeating idea. But remember, we are just dealing with that suffix neurium now. Mysium is for muscle, neurium is for nerves. So we have the epineurium surrounding fascicles, which are surrounded by a perineurium, which contain individual axons, which are surrounded by an endoneurium. And some of those axons may or may not be myelinated. This particular one is showing a myelin sheath. So in this cross-section of a nerve over here on the right, we can see this is going to be the nerve as a whole. So that's going to be where your epineurium is. Each one of these circles is going to be a fascicle, and you can see, so this material here would be the perineurium. And if you're to zoom in, you might be able to see individual little circles. It's hard to zoom in on a video like this, but those would be the individual axons, and you would see some connective tissue in between each one of those, and that would be the endoneurium. Okay, so this is peripheral nerve structure. This is going to be the kind of way all of your nerves are formed, like spinal nerve and out from your spinal cord. So now we're going to take a look at some peripheral nerves that are associated with your brain. They branch off of your brain, and you might be seeing some of these as you're looking at pictures in the textbook, or if you find videos or looking online at supplemental resources. There's 12 sets of cranial nerves. They're one on each side. So we're just going to name them and give a brief description of kind of what they do. But you have 12 sets. You have 24 nerves total, but it is symmetrical down the midline. And what's kind of nice about these is they go, if you're looking at this picture, so if this is anterior here and posterior here, it's 1 through 12 in this direction. So our first cranial nerve is olfactory nerve number 1, which is going to be right here. That's number 1. Olfactory nerve deals with bringing in your sense of smell. Makes sense. Cranial nerve number 2 is your optic nerve right here. That's number 2. Allows you to see. It brings all that visual information to your brain, allows you to process visual information. The next 3, 4, and 6, I guess we're skipping 5. 3, 4, and 6, all of these are motor neurons that go to control the extrinsic muscles of your eye. So that's 3, trochlear. Where's 4? Oh, 4 is trochlear. Sorry, 3 is over here. Ocular motor, that's kind of nice. It tells you exactly what it does. 4 is trochlear, and 5 or 6 is abducens. So they all go to allow your eyeballs to do all these types of things, right? So that's 3, 4, and 6. Number 5 is this really big one here called trigeminal. So that's this big chunk here. 5, 1, 2, 3. They kind of break it up. You don't need to know those branches, just trigeminal is one. So you can see the trigeminal reaches different parts of the face. So we have branches for kind of the forehead, up down to the nose, one that kind of goes up right here, and then the other one that kind of goes jaw up to the side of the face. So trigeminal is kind of sending motor commands and sensory information from your a lot of your face. And here's some motor commands here. Okay. The next group, so that was 5, number 5 here. 6 was it was abducens. 7 is our facial nerve. Okay, so we have 7 is right here, kind of showing a little bit of both motor and sensory, motor muscles to some of your face, sensory to your eyes and your tongue and your glands and things. 7, or that was 7. This is number 8 here is vestibular cochlear. It is bringing sensory information from hearing and equilibrium, so from your inner ear. 9 is 9 is glossopharyngeal. I was thinking of 10. So 9 is glossopharyngeal, mainly motor and sensory of your tongue and throat. Glosso meaning tongue, pharyngeal meaning pharynx. Does that make sense? The biggie is vagus, number 10. So vagus is our number 10. That sends a ton of information and control down to your thoracic cavity, your digestive viscera, and your abdominal pelvic cavity. It's a big one. So vagus is number 10. Number 11 is accessory. Over here on this diagram. Accessory mainly goes to some muscles in your neck. If you are learning your muscles, sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscle of your neck. And then hypoglossal is number 12. Over here on this diagram. It also does mainly motor to your tongue and some muscles of your throat as well. So again, I know it seems overwhelming, but a lot of times the names of the muscles gives you clues as to what they're doing. So really the more challenging ones that have a little bit more than a straight like vision or smelling, like trigeminal, facial, are ones that are the most diverse, so they might just need a little bit more time. So as you're working through these, just be able to briefly name them and describe them. They are listed in Roman numerals on the left, and I put regular numbers on the right. I don't care whether you do Roman numerals or regular numbers. Just be able to briefly list and describe just like less than one sentence descriptions for the functions of these cranial nerves. All right, and then for your spinal nerves, so this is kind of that extension of what's happening with the spinal nerves, is once they branch off, so your dorsal and ventral roots come off, they come together to treat the spinal nerve, and the spinal nerve branches into 2 branches, which are called ramus, and ramus means branch. So here's your spinal nerve, and then it branches towards the back called the dorsal ramus, and then it branches towards the front called the ventral ramus, which is nice. We use a lot of directional terms here, so that's why it's important to make sure you're comfortable with those. The dorsal ramus just go to the back. They just turn kind of posteriorly and just innervate all of the muscles of your back. So think of trapezius and latissimus dorsi and erector spinae and those muscles of your back. The ventral ramus, when they kind of branch around to the front, a lot of those ventral rami kind of reconnect into what we call a plexus. So we have a cervical plexus, a brachial plexus, a lumbar plexus, and a sacral plexus. There's no plexus in your thoracic nerves. The ventral rami just go out right in between those, like those intercostal muscles. So really what you need to know about these plexuses is they just are these connections of ventral rami that will then branch off to your peripheral nerves, which we're not making you memorize your nerve list. In the upper division class, they have to memorize their peripheral nerves. But just know that these branching off of these plexuses are going to give you nerves that will then go and innervate your body wall and your limbs. So for example, from the brachial plexus, you might see an axillary nerve or a brachial nerve or radial and ulnar nerve that are going to come down and innervate your limb. Okay, but we're not, your book doesn't go quite into that depth. Okay. Most of your, let me back up. All of your spinal nerves are what we call mixed nerves. They're mixed nerves because they're carrying both motor and sensory information. Some of your cranial nerves are either purely sensory, purely motor, or mixed. So for example, your optic nerve is purely sensory. It's only bringing sensory information back. But say like your ocular motor is purely motor. It's only bringing motor commands out to allow you to wiggle your eye. But like trigeminal and facial, those are mixed because they have both motor and sensory. So that's kind of what those classifications are for. All right. I think that's it. So we have one more video, the last one discussing your autonomic nervous system. So I will see you then. Bye.